Welcome back to Hardball. John McCain said American troops could be in Iraq for 100 years, but he said that's only if Americans are not taking casualties. Well, when would that be? Republican strategist Todd Harris is a former McCain spokesman, and Brian Katulis is with the Center for American Progress. I guess I've got to ask you, Todd, the senator was clear. He said we should stay there for up to 100 years. He put no time limit on it. But he said if we're not taking casualties at all or anybody getting wounded, when would that be?
Well, that's not what he said. What he said was we need to have an honest discussion about what our long-term commitment to this region is going to be. Look, recommendation number 34 of the bipartisan Iraq study group says the question of long-term force presence in the region has to be on the table. And as long as it's on the table, our long-term chances for success in Iraq are going to improve significantly. But to just say, in the context, the middle of a political campaign, no, absolutely not. That is not on the table. That's not straight talk, and that's not John McCain's style.
Let's watch John McCain. Here he is answering a question up in New Hampshire about whether he supported the idea of us staying there 50 years or so, and his answer was, well, you'll hear it here.
President Bush has talked about our staying in Iraq for 50 years.
Maybe 100.
Is that
how long? We've been in South Korea. We've been in Japan for 60 years. We've been in South Korea for 50 years or so. That'd be fine with me,
so
as long as Americans are not being injured or harmed or wounded or killed. Then it's fine with me. I hope it would be fine with you if we maintain a presence in a very volatile part of the world where Al-Qaeda is training, recruiting, and equipping and motivating people every single day.
Frank, tell us, how do we receive that response by the senator?
Well, look, I think he's pretty clear. He is running for a third term for George W. Bush on foreign policy. He's trying to distance himself, and we have a lot of whining from conservatives right now who are saying, oh, well, he said it in this context or that context, or it's been taken out of context. Look, it's clear. There's a choice here. More of the same of what we've had for the last 5 years with George Bush, and that's what McCain's offering you, and the progressives and the Democrats are giving you a choice. And I think he's been crystal clear, and he's demonstrated to the world that he doesn't understand, and he's not learned the lessons of the mistakes of the Bush administration on foreign policy.
You know, that 100 years does jump out at you, and he does say without taking any casualties at all, no Americans being injured. However, you have to wonder, when does that period of nonviolence in Iraq commence? When does it begin, that 100 years?
That's a great question, Chris, and these are tough questions. But to say unilaterally in the middle of a political campaign, I've already got the answers to these questions. That is not honest foreign policy. That is not looking out for the honest interests of our national security. That's trying to make cheap political points, which is why the Annenberg Center, factcheck.org, said all of these baseless distortions of his remark, that they are rank falsehoods.
I love whining. I mean, I love the fact that conservatives...
Brian, I have really bad news for you. You don't get to run against George Bush again. John McCain is going to be on the...
You guys, here. And I love the whining that you're on the defensive. You're on the defensive when it comes to national security policy. You're on the defensive here, and you can't explain why he wants to stay there to fight Iraq's civil wars. Foster this culture of dependency.
This is exactly my point. He's talking about making...
Okay, I want you to study this quote. Here's Rick Hertzberg of the New Yorker. Quote, McCain wants to stay in Iraq until no more Americans are getting killed, no matter how long it takes and how many Americans get killed achieving that goal. That is the goal of not getting any more Americans killed. And once that goal is achieved, we'll stay. For 100 years of no casualties.
It doesn't quite make sense.
You know who else supports a long-term commitment to the region? General Merrill McPeak, Barack Obama's top national security advisor. When we invaded Iraq, he said, you know what, I hope we're there for a century. This is not John McCain. This is Merrill McPeak. This is the military. This is General Petraeus. This is the Iraq study group saying we need a long-term commitment to a violent region.
Look, conservatives have demonstrated that they don't know how to fight this century's battles in the war on terror. They simply want to get us embroiled in Iraq's civil wars, and you see this today. Today in Basra and Baghdad, we are fighting. We're in the crosshairs of a civil war between different Shiite groups. How is that making Americans more secure? They can't explain that. They can't explain what their end state is, and then they fumble over themselves now and are on the defensive right now in terms of, oh, well, you know, Senator McCain didn't say 100 years. Well, that's what the sum total of his policy policies demonstrate, an open-ended commitment to a divided Iraqi government that is not standing up, that is actually at war with itself, and we're supposed to stay there and referee this civil war? I mean, come on, this is not the best way to make Americans more secure. And I think most Americans understand that, and this is why John McCain, I think, is really going to go the way of Bob Dole and a number of other conservatives.
Let me ask you about this. You think how long, Todd, do you think the American people will support us taking casualties in Iraq? How many years?
I don't know the answer to that, and neither does Senator McCain, and neither does anyone else, which is why Senator McCain is willing to have an open, honest, straight-talk dialogue about this, not political demagoguing, not serious distortions of his record as the Annenberg Center.
Again, I keep trying to figure out what the distortion is.
Because
What do we mean by that?
Chris, the DNC is trying to raise money.
I'm just asking you about the 100 years. What did he mean by 100 years?
He said that he would be willing to have U.S. forces. There's a difference between a troop presence and a combat presence. He's not advocating a 100-year combat presence.
But he's talking about Japan. He's talking about Korea. He's talking about models that are completely inappropriate for Iraq that's in a civil war. It's a civil war.
So Brian's view then is to close our bases in Korea, pull our troops out of Japan, pull our troops out of Kuwait, pull our troops out of Germany.
It's apples and bicycles. There was actually not a civil war in Korea or in Japan. We actually went in there and we stabilized the country. We didn't waste billions of taxpayer money, $12 billion a month. This is what Senator McCain is proposing. We should have this open-ended commitment while oil, is at $110 a barrel and the Iraqis aren't even spending their own money, and we're going to continue to pay in blood and in treasure for what? For a policy that has no clear end date.
Okay.
And this is what conservatives are offering.
Let's get past the Talmudic analysis here to some simple question. Is it fair if you're a voter to look at it this way? The Democrats have a short string on how long they're willing to stay in that country, maybe a year or two, basically, and then get out. The Republicans are not. The Republicans are not putting a time limit on our commitment.
I think that that's fair. Republicans are saying we're going to look and see what the facts are on the ground. We're going to take the recommendation of the bipartisan Baker-Hamilton Commission that said leave this on the table, leave the presence.
Okay, we're going to thank you guys. Thank you very much, Todd Harris. It's been a great debate. This debate will continue. Todd Harris and Brian Katulis. Up next, the Friday